At 10:30 for the Water Policy Committee for March. I'm Alison Coombs. I am the chair of the committee and an at-large council member. We have our vice chair, Councilmember Ward 6, and our other member, Councilmember Medina, for Ward 3. So we'll go ahead and start with the approval of the minutes. Any changes?
No.
Okay, approved as written. And then consent items. Any questions on the consent items? Actually, don't have any questions about the water supply update today. Looks good. So we'll go ahead to item 3, the WISE Water Delivery Agreement Amendment with Alex Davis.
Yes, thank you. I'll just stand up, maybe over here, just because it's funny shape.
Why don't you stay up there?
Oh, sorry.
This is really quick. Councilmember Medina, you might be the least familiar with the WISE agreement, but I know that's crossed your desk before. I know that Councilmember Bergan and Coombs are very familiar with WISE. We have been looking to update the water delivery agreement for many years now because a couple things were out of date. Most significantly was the infrastructure, the DIA connection and the Binney connection. So the DIA connection is a section of pipe that is connecting Denver's water system as it runs out to DIA to our Prairie Waters pipeline. And that allows Denver to deliver their WISE share a little differently and use water that was otherwise getting stalled in their system. So it's been an important piece for Denver to put into place. The Binney connection, we have a temporary Binney interconnect, and there are a couple people here who really understand infrastructure better than me. So if we have infrastructure questions, we could ask them. The Binney connection is that infrastructure that takes the water we are delivering to the WISE parties from Binney treatment, water purification facility, and moves it out. We have a temporary interconnect in place now, but the permanent connection is what they've been working on. So that infrastructure was supposed to be done 4 or 5 years ago and has been delayed for various reasons. We say in the updated WDA, the deadline was supposed to be June 1, 2025. It has been slightly delayed again. So, but Denver and South Metro Water Authority believe that they will get it done by August, September of 2025.
Yep.
Is this when they were doing all that, the pipe that was being laid by Sorrel Ranch, Alexander Road, I like your name. That's all part of it, right?
That's all part of the WISE infrastructure, yes, on their side of what they're building.
But it doesn't connect into our permanent.
It connects out at Binney
Yeah.
through an interesting connection out there. They're doing the disinfection. So we take treated water, but not disinfected water. And that's one of the tweaks in the WDA is we're allowing them to disinfect now.
Oh.
They have, every water system has slightly different disinfection parameters, I guess I would say. And so we use chloramines, but they actually, I think they vary from user to user what they use. So we're allowing them to control the disinfection. So it connects at Binney,
Okay.
coming out of the Binney facility, but bypassing our disinfection, and they have disinfection facilities. And then that's what dumped into the pipe that then connects to the tank on Smoky Hill.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. I would not explain that quite as well, so thanks. So infrastructure finally getting into place. The second big change or update was around the rates. And Kat and her team worked really closely on the agreement to update some of the information that's going into the rates and to make sure that the equation that we're using in the the modeling that we're using to do the rates is all correct. The third big change was the block so as you probably recall, we have the WISE agreement requires Aurora and Denver to deliver 100,000 acre feet over a 10-year period. And that is called a block, and it's not a rolling average like on the Colorado River, which we'll talk about later, but it is a block. So 2025 to 2035, we need to deliver that amount of water. Because of the delayed in infrastructure, the first block is going to be 95,000 acre feet. If the infrastructure that's being put into place is not fully tested and operational to Aurora's satisfaction, by June 1, 2026, the block will reduce another 5,000 acre feet. So they're starting a little bit lower because of the infrastructure pieces, and if they don't get their infrastructure in place and fully done, it will reduce again. The block is significant because it is a commitment to a volumetric amount. So rates, blocks, infrastructure were really the three main updates in the new water delivery agreement. And then there's a couple minor name changes and pieces like that. But that's where I'm going to stop.
It does not change substantively the agreements in the original, the same delivery, long-term obligations, rate structure, things like that stay the same. They're just refined within the original agreed to concepts. One other thing I should probably give you a heads up on, I don't think you'll hear anything about this, but where that pipeline was put in, there was an irrigation system that was damaged a little bit, which caused the collapse of a sidewalk. So there, I don't know if that letter's gone over yet. I think the letter is going over here within the next couple of days to South Metro saying, hey, you need to go repair this section of sidewalk that was damaged as a result of that installation. So
The road's been,
the road's all good. Yeah, it's been repaired. And that all looks good. They had used some landscaping on the side of the road as a staging area that appears to have broken the irrigation system, and then that got under the sidewalk and near, what is the road that the rec center is off of?
Alexander.
So near Alexander and
No, not quite. It's the other one.
the other one that goes the other way, right there at that intersection is where the sidewalk collapsed. So
Surprised I haven't heard.
yeah, it's good that you haven't heard
Yeah.
about that because it was pretty, it was not a lot, but it was pretty bad. So it was coned off for a while. We're gonna ask them to take care of these repairs.
So we're bringing this to you. We're asking that you approve and send it on to council for full council approval and then signature by the city.
Okay, any other questions from the committee?
None for me.
Sounds good to me. So we'll go ahead and move that forward.
Thank you.
Next is the 2025 WaterWise Day logistics.
Share my screen. Good morning, everybody. Up at the front. All right, so last year in 2024, we held our first ever annual WaterWise Day at the Municipal Garden at the ANC. I guess I'm gonna stand up there. I didn't know which screen this was gonna pop up on, so it'd be weird if I'm okay and it's over here. And we are deep in the planning stages of 2025, so I wanted to go over that a little bit. I need a notepad because I'm gonna ask for you to volunteer for some stuff. Put your bed down. So WaterWise Day last year and moving forward is a way to kind of bring the community into the WaterWise Garden. It's open to anybody, even if you're not an Aurora resident, but that's obviously our target, to get them into the garden. And it includes educational sessions, a bunch of booths, a way for the community to interact with water conservation staff and do some education. This year will be Saturday, May 17th, same place at the Waterwise Garden, from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. this year, and I'll go through some of the details. Again, the focus is really on water efficiency and waterwise landscapes, which makes the Waterwise Garden a great place to have it. We can engage with the public in the space that we're trying to get them to change their landscape to. This year, we're planning 4 educational sessions, 2 garden tours where we'll walk around with Amanda, who manages the garden. We currently have, I think we're up to 18 booths and vendors. So I do have a kind of a list of people who had early on agreed to come. Some of them have dropped off and picked up some other ones. So that's ever evolving. The good thing is that we can change that list up until the day and add people and move people as we need to. Giveaways and raffles again this year. Last year, if you were there, we provided lunch. This year, we're just providing breakfast for up to 150 people. Breakfast was a huge hit last year. Lunch kind of put a pause in the middle of the day and changed the dynamics a little bit. So we're taking what we learned from last year and putting all of that stuff into the second go round. The vendor for breakfast, again, is Elaine with Compass Cafe, which is perfect. It's local. She's on site. She brings it down. So we get to support her.
Good burritos.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah. Some of the changes from 2024. So we're expanding the youth activities. Last year, we tried bringing the youth in to get the kids to come with the parents. This year, we're expanding those activities specifically for the youth. And those will be advertised as well. So hopefully it gets more parents to bring the kiddos. And then once they're there, we can engage with them a little bit more. So we're really excited about that. The overall day is a little bit shorter. So if you remember, if you were there last year, we went till, I think our plan was almost 3, and then the weather changed that plan for us very quickly. So we're trying to shorten it, but not change the amount of interaction and the amount of education sessions. We do have one less formal education center session in the activity area. More time for garden engagement. So we're changing the way the whole schedule works. Last year we had back-to-back presentations with very short kind of gaps in the middle. We want to make sure that we're providing information. Then they get a period of time to engage in the garden, and then another session, and then more engagement time. So again, just learning from last year, which was our first one, trying to make it better. So here is where I'm asking for your volunteer help. So we have the 4 educational sessions. And last year, council members from Water Policy Committee did the intros for some of those speakers. And it really is a time for you to talk about your thoughts on water conservation and then roll into that next speaker. I'm looking for volunteers. You don't have to volunteer right now. You can, or you can say no. Really don't do it. For the 9 o'clock session, the 10:30 and the 11:15 time slot. Yes, it's probably easier to read up here because it's really small.
Yeah. So but there's not a 9:45?
9:45 has been.
Well, and I am
I would
going to
do the
be in
10,
Lamar for work, so I don't know if you want to do the opening remark.
Well, I think we have the mayor online.
Mayor's online,
Or
yeah.
Mayor Kaufman,
Yeah, hold on.
okay, it's from 8:30 to 8:45 on May 17th. Do you think you can do
I
those?
schedule real quick here.
remarks? I will be gone, unfortunately.
I am too. I should have been there. I know, last year was fun, right? Yes.
Well, I'm bummed that I'm going to be gone, but this is a thing that I've been planning for a while.
So.
So the mayor's gonna,
I don't know.
I can schedule.
So that's May 17th at what time in the morning?
Yeah, 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna go with my age inappropriate supermodel girlfriend to Paris, but I can cancel that. I'll be there.
Put it on your calendar for 8 o'clock, Mayor.
8 o'clock.
Right
Okay.
down to 8 o'clock.
And we can help as much as anybody wants or doesn't want with any of the remarks on the session. We'll get more details out on that. So
I'll do the 10:30 or whatever it
Okay.
is, 10, is that it? 10:30?
Well, yeah.
Is that the sustainable gardening?
Yeah, 10:30 is, the building waterwise habitats and suburban landscapes would be the meeting that follow.
Hmm. Hmm. So no butterflies this year.
No.
Where's the butterfly?
Sustainable habitats, waterway.
Habitats are for butterflies.
Okay, because I did my song last year, which was great. I had my little boombox thing and I did the birds and the
You
bees
can
song.
still be the.
You could do that and
I
maybe you could
remember that.
building little bee bags in your,
Okay.
um,
So if you need time, I got you down for 10:30. I got Mayor down for 8:30. Just let me know. I can send out an email or send it through Marshall.
Yeah, so we're still missing 9
Yep, 9 o'clock.
and.
I can do that.
And I can stay for a while. It was such a nice event last year. I really enjoyed it.
You can do the 9 o'clock.
Okay, we're on 9.
maybe we should ask Mayor Pro Tem Sunberg if he
Yeah.
wants to come speak.
Yeah.
Maybe he can give the closing remarks.
Okay. I can reach out to him.
Okay.
And he was there last year and seemed to enjoy it. So,
I think-
Councilman Jurinsky already reached out before we even had put everything together and said, hey, what's the agenda? Where? And so that's how,
Oh, she got 2.
that's how the 9:45 or whichever
Yeah.
one it was,
9:45.
Okay.
got taken as she,
Okay.
she was very proactive. She's excited to participate again. So that'll be great. I'll reach out to Councilman Sundberg about the 11:15 and appreciate all your help and support. And next year, we'll try to maybe get a date out a little bit sooner.
Okay, yeah, sometimes I have to plan all the
It'll
events.
probably be about the same time frame.
Okay,
Just in terms of putting the publicity out there, I know you put it in the water newsletter, social media, I guess, as
Yeah,
well.
it'll be similar to last year, where we'll try to hit everything that we can.
It was a really cool event.
We're hoping it builds year to year. You know, you get a base group of people that come the first year, which was last year, and then they come plus some new people the following year. So hopefully it'll continue.
Well, now Marshall won't be there to bring his 8 children
I know.
and grandchildren.
Which was so fun too.
That came from the airport last year. Yeah, I have, my son is getting married on the 16th in Utah, and so I'm gonna have a hard time getting back from the reception Friday night for this.
yeah, I'm pretty sure the stuff I have to do in Lamar is on the 17th. I'll double check
Okay.
because it might be on the 16th, in which case maybe I can just drive up here instead of staying overnight. So,
Okay.
but I'm pretty sure I have to actually be there doing things on the 17th.
Yeah, and what we'll do is if there's a spot, even if you can't let us know until it's closer, I can jump in and do the intro for that speaker. So we can be pretty flexible with that.
No, I know, I'll know. I just have to.
Okay.
I have to pull up my computer and look at the stuff that's on there. Cause I have 3 days blocked off on my calendar, but
Leave for Bayfield the next day.
Okay, and so you can get, you've already got your routine dialed in.
Well, I don't know if I would do the same one, because last time it was,
You could. That
Okay.
would work for this. yeah.
Okay, okay.
Do that. And we'll get you some more detail. We'll get all of you more details
Just-
on what is.
flower dress. So are you guaranteeing good weather?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even the people who professionally do the weather, they're right, like maybe 20% of the time, so. The rest is more informational. Here's some of the committed partners and vendors. Again, this is changing from when we submitted this. But we will have even more than we had last year, which is really exciting. And what we try to go for is a mix. So it's a mix of city groups, nonprofits, landscape contractors, vendors. It's not just like a showcase for people to come sell stuff. It's really for people to be educated and be able to engage with the different booths that are there. This is what it'll look like. You can tell there's more red boxes this year. Those are the tents that we have planned out. So we'll be conservation, the kind of welcome area will be staged here again. And we're trying to pull people throughout the entire garden space based on the location of the booths. Again, we'll have restrooms, ADA, and non-ADA restrooms up at the top and hand washing stations and all of that good stuff. We are expanding the raffles and drawings. Those are pretty popular last year. We're working through how we're going to do that this year as far as handling the raffles and the drawings. Last year, we did them at the end of each session, but we have 4 speaking sessions and we'll have even more raffles and drawings. So we're working through what that process is going to look like. We haven't got that dialed down yet.
Next, Arden for you.
Oh, the good cards.
Well,
This
more
is-
smart controllers this year.
Yes.
So smart controllers, next garden. some
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's a mix. So we'll definitely have orbit controllers. We may not do any ratio controllers because they don't want to come to our event. So we might do all the beehives, which is fine. That's
Is there a reason why?
I don't know why. I don't. They just.
I'm a customer, then maybe I should reach out.
And
Hey,
they,
we're fine with that.
yeah,
Hey, I have your product.
they've generally been good to work with. I have one of theirs and one of the beehives because I'm a nerd, but usually they've been great to work with. We reached out and they're like, yeah, can't make it. And they didn't say the last one. That's okay. The Husqvarna owns Orbit now, and Brad, who is way up in that company, actually flies in from Utah to attend this. So great partner. Of course. But yeah, bunch of different stuff. We're still working on adding a few more things. One of the things we're thinking of, we didn't have time this year, for next year for the youth, is having shirts, which just reminded me, I forgot one of the most important parts. So let me skip back some slides. This year we have a theme that we plan to run with into the future, rooted in Aurora. So last year was just Waterwise Day. This year we're like, you know what, let's come up with a theme that ties it back to the community, ties it into Waterwise landscapes. Pros has their Back to Our Roots campaign for all of the Waterwise or native seed conversion. So it kind of ties in with that. So we're really excited to be able to take a theme and then in future years have that become even, more part of it, have t-shirts for the kids, maybe something like that. So always trying to look forward. Very exciting slide, traffic control plan. Just so you know, it'll be the same as last year. And for the means of safety, this section will be closed down, parking will be here, so we'll take care of all that stuff in the morning. Public Works has been a great partner to help us get through the traffic control planning process. And inclement weather, in case I'm wrong, that is going to be perfect. We will be inside the lobby of the AMC, and the educational sessions will be held in the Aurora room at the AMC. So we have that all set up. Hopefully weather's good and we can cancel that and the security we have to pay for to do that. So that's it for me.
All right. Any additional questions? All right. Awesome. Thank you. And so now we have the sewer winter quarter average.
That's not as exciting.
That's not
Sorry. Sorry to say.
So thanks for having me. Elizabeth Gilitzer-Gallardo, the manager of pricing and revenue. And I'm here today to discuss sewer winter quarter average, our current process, and then also the changes we're making for car washes. So to give an overview of winter quarter average is a volumetric sewer rate calculation, which is based on the average volumetric discharge of a property into the wastewater system. And this applies towards our commercial, multifamily, and residential accounts. It does not apply to irrigation accounts. So part of the calculation, is the sewer volumetric unit, which is determined by averaging the water indoor usage during the winter periods of December through February, which is usage that's actually displayed on the January through March bills. So every year we review every property's usage during that time frame, the winter period, and we recalculate it. And so their new sewer volumetric unit is applied every year. So this just gives an example of how the current process is. So as you can see at the top, the January bill usage is 8,000 gallons for water. February is 6, and then March is 7. So what that calculates for an average is 7,000 gallons. That's for their sewer volumetric unit. that's involved in the sewer calculation. So outlined at the bottom there, they are charged the $5.06 per 1,000 gallons. And their winter quarter average is the 7,000. So their bill every month for the sewer usage charge is $35.42. So this stays static throughout the year. It's the same charge. It doesn't change. Yep.
Why would February be lower?
Why would February be lower?
Yeah, or I guess why would January be higher?
This was just an example that I came up with. I just,
And there's a couple of reasons that's not uncommon on some of these, partly because we bill in only 1,000-gallon increments. So the usage in January may have actually
5
been,
weeks.
well, the usage period may have been a little longer for January, it is. But also, the usage there may have been 7.5 thousand gallons and got rounded up. The usage in February could have been 6.4, but it gets rounded down because we only bill in 1,000-gallon increments. So we do bill for all the usage, just the way it gets captured per month is only on the 1,000-gallon increment. So a couple of things.
and you're correct, Marshall. In February, we do see lower usage across all the different classes just because it is a shorter month. So recently, though, we were approached by a car wash and they wanted us to take a look at winter quarter average for the car wash industry. So we did perform a study and we did find that car washes actually do have different water usage properties. During the winter months when winter quarter average is calculated, they actually use more water, which contributes to a higher winter quarter average that's set forth throughout the year, higher than what they use for water usage during the summer months. And the reason is because there's more precipitation during the winter months usually. And so we use mag chloride on for de-icing roads. And so a lot more customers go to car washes to remove this from their vehicles during those months. So within here, we took 13 car wash properties, a mix of tunnel, lawn, and a combination of both, and we reviewed their 5-year usage. So in this first graph over here on the left, this is just an overall 5-year average car wash usage between those 13 properties. And it shows that January through March is higher water usage. So that contributes to a higher winter quarter average. On the left or on the right, is the 5-year car wash usage by type. And you can see overall the March usage is higher than the summer months. And altogether the January through March is pretty high compared to the rest of the year. So to fix this issue for car washes, we are posting a rules and regs associated with the city code. This is actually labeled wrong. It's city code 138-327. So my apologies for that. But this shows at the top here what the actual city code is and that winter quarter average and determining the winter period with the sewer charge. But this rules and regs would actually implement, there would no longer be a winter quarter average for the car wash industry. It would actually, their sewer volumetric unit would be equal to their water consumption that they use each month. So it'd be a 1-to-1 ratio. And on the next slide, I'll show you what that looks like. But they would still be subject to the monthly sewer rate, and this would still account for water that's returned to the sanitary sewer system. So this is just an example again. So if a car wash is to use January water usage is 8,000 gallons, then their sewer volumetric unit would be 8,000 gallons. For February, water is 6,000, sewer is going to be 6,000. March is 7,000, and then sewer will be 7,000 again. So again, they're still charged the $5.06, but their usage is changing based on their water usage. So they'll no longer have a consistent fee every month. It'll fluctuate.
And that same principle would apply for all the other months too, not just the winter
Yep.
months.
So this just gives some data behind changing to the 1-to-1 ratio rather than the winter quarter average. So again, with those 13 car washes, the graph on the left, it gives the 5-year average sewer charges based on the method. So in red shows the 1-to-1 ratio, what they would be charged in over 5 years. And then the purple shows winter quarter average. So a 5-year cost savings for these car washes would be $132,000. Then on the right is the average monthly sewer charges based on the method. And then orange is the 1-to-1 ratio, and then blue is the winter quarter average method. And an average monthly cost savings per property is about $181 per month. So that gives an overview, and we wanted to bring this to you before posting to the public to see if you had any questions, comments, or concerns.
Councilmember Bergan, do you have anything?
So if you wash your car at home,
Your water bill.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out, is it
Well-
cheaper for me to go to the car wash or?
Especially don't wash your car at home in the winter months.
Gotcha.
So any,
Well, no, because then your winter usage would go higher and you would be based off of that.
yeah, because if you wash your car or do anything else like that, high water use in those winter months, it drives your sewer rate up for your entire year.
Oh, so,
So you don't want to, so if there's a season, you definitely want to use car washes. It's the winter season.
okay.
So that you don't pay. And we didn't do this for the cost savings. We did this because we have enough data to make sure we're being fair and equitable for how we're charging car washes for their usage, because they really have minimal, if any, irrigation demands. In fact, some of them have separate irrigation meters, right?
Sure.
Okay, so, but for single family residential, a lot of our other customer classes, if they've got irrigation uses on their meter, there's no way to do anything like this for them, but there is for car washes, so. But yeah, to your point, don't fill your swimming pool, don't wash your car, don't do any of those things that use high volumes of water in the winter, because they will establish your sewer charge for the entirety of the year. And if you have a leak in the winter, like a leaking toilet or fixture, you definitely want to call in and talk to the customer service reps to get a leak adjustment so that your sewer bill's not higher for the rest of the year also. So to your points.
Is the mayor good?
Yeah.
Mayor, quit washing in the winter.
I'm depending on you to wash my car, but,
All right.
Or have your supermodel girlfriend wash your car.
age inappropriate supermodel girlfriend.
I thought you were marrying 80-year-old ladies in Mexico, Mayor. But anyway, that was the whole time we were in Mexico. That was true. Councilmember Medina, do you have any questions? So I guess my only question is, as this goes out to the public, if there are other types of businesses that come forward and say, hey, you know, we think we have a similar situation that we'd like you to assess, what is that conversation gonna look like?
Really good question. We know there is one customer specifically, we're gonna talk about them at the end of the meeting today, who would love to have their sewer billing adjusted, but we've told them so far no. Now, if they want to pay, we'll walk through that letter.
Yeah, we can go through that
And
at the end.
if they actually move forward and pay those fees, then we would be willing to look at adjusting their sewer billing. Right now, they get billed sewer for all the volumes of water that go into the facility, which is not necessarily accurate on the sewer, but that was one of the only ways we could offset some of the loss of revenue.
Right.
So if they want to pay those fees, we could fix that. We're not aware, we may hear from some other businesses who say, well, our winter quarter average isn't representative either. We generally are not willing to make adjustments because the water losses, when the winter uses generally are not representative of sewer charges in the summer, is when they're consuming large volumes of water. We have to then go replace that water. Today's connection fees make up for that replacement charge because we've refined our connection fees, but historically, They did not. And so our only way to offset the increased cost to replace the water is by leaving their sewer unadjusted. So most customers, the answer will be no, because this is how we're having to recover the costs of the consumption of the water.
But because all of this water, none of this water is ultimately consumed, it all comes back to the system, then it's not the same situation.
The water that comes back, we don't have to replace. But again, most of the customers who have a difference between winter use where the winter quarter average may not be representative of their sewer flow is because they're taking the water.
Right.
And it's not coming back. So we probably were saying the same thing.
Okay.
And we
So-
do have some uses in the system, like Gotham Greens, some of the grow operations that are in our system where they do may or may not, and we haven't really pulled this data about whether they use more water in the winter or not, but we do have, those types of agricultural uses that may fall into this, but we really haven't. They're not that many. We certainly have far more car washes.
Yeah, so the only way we would consider an exception would be if they've come into the system very recently and they paid the higher connection fee for the water they're consuming, then it might make sense to look at an exception, but we haven't.
So, but it would be case by case exception. We're not going to other industries and saying we're gonna change the code for you all as well. Okay.
The golf courses fit on the irrigation meter, so they'll have a meter for their irrigation use. They may have a separate small meter for like a clubhouse or something.
Oh.
But all the irrigation use doesn't get charged sewer.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all for the update. So next. PFAS related water quality management at Aurora Water, Earl Wilkinson.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Earl Wilkinson, AGM of Water Operations. So go to the next slide, please. So it's a little bit of a busy slide, but PFAS timeline. Dealing with PFAS has been a bit of a journey for us, so I kind of want to walk through this. So in 2014, as part of what the EPA's charge is, they look at unregulated contaminants. So that is the year when they really started to include PFAS, seeing how they could monitor it, look at PFAS as a constituent that needed to be regulated, and look at what we could do to move forward to a better way to treat PFAS in order to improve the safety of the drinking water. So in 2016, the EPA released some interim health advisories for PFOA and PFOS, which are the two primary PFAS constituents that we'll be talking about. So at that time, the guideline that they put was 70 parts per trillion. So for Aurora, we're significantly under that, but there were a couple water utilities in the south part, right below Colorado Springs, that primarily use groundwater. So the city of Fountain and city of our water district of Security Widefield, that both exceeded that. So as part of that, they had to send out letters to their customers and start looking at how they might treat that. So those were areas that were impacted by Peterson Air Force Base at the time. So that there was a lot of media about that and all the other fun stuff associated with
Chemicals.
Yeah. So firefighting foam. So in 19 and 20, as part of trying to help CDPHE move forward with the PFAS process, the city of Aurora, as we always do, we aided in doing a lot of monitoring and testing so that they would have that information available. And then in 2022, this is where things significantly changed. And I believe this was the last time we really talked to you about PFAS. So in 2022, they put out an interim health advisory, and I've got a follow-up slide to talk about that, that was thousands of times lower than the 70 parts per trillion. So basically what that created was a situation where we had a couple water sources that we had to take offline because we have 3 treatment facilities. Only one of them is really capable of treating for PFAS right now. So we took the Cherry Creek Wells and Quincy Reservoir offline. We did not use those water sources. And then we basically we're doing everything with our treatment facility at Benny with our granulated activated carbon to meet those regulations. So 2023, they came out with some other standards. In 2024, ultimately, they came out with standards that we'll talk about in our slide, the 4 parts per trillion, which is what we are required to treat to currently. So as part of that process, to get to the 4 parts per trillion, there was a lot of work we did with our small scale, the mini Benny plant, to determine the different bed materials that we're using, filter materials, so that we could come up with this plan that we have for treatment. Also with that, in 2023, we looked at buying an instrument so that we could test for PFAS. When we sent it out to laboratories, we were looking at about a 6 to 8 week turnaround. It was very expensive. So council supported us purchasing this piece of equipment. Today, as of late last year, we are in a position now where we've worked with the state and we are certified with CDPHE with our PFAS testing. So we're very capable, and that instrument significantly helped us in the ability to really optimize our ability to treat the PFAS in our drinking water. So next slide. So again, 2022 is when we removed Cherry Creek Wells and Quincy Reservoir. So both of those sources right now go to Griswold. Griswold is incapable of treating for PFAS because it's a direct filtration plant. Also, actually, Wimlinger is not able to treat for that. So one of the other things that we're doing is we are working on a project right now to treat Cherry Creek Well and Quincy Reservoir water. We're using a different type of technology. It's ion exchange. It's one of the 3 technologies that work really well for PFAS, but we are basically being able to treat it not at the treatment plants, but ahead of the treatment plants to do the work that we need to do and blend it into those water sources. So again, 2023, the PFAS rule. So this is our maximum, our speed limit, if you will, that we've got to make sure that we don't exceed with the PFOA and the PFAS. That rule was promulgated in 2024, and we don't have to worry about the health advisory limits anymore. So we're moving forward with that treatment. So next. So its regulatory guidance has obviously changed, and our focus now is on the MCL, or the 4 parts per trillion. So as part of what we do at Aurora Water to treatment facilities, we always manage to a strategy, to a target that's less than the MCL. This is 75% is what we're using, so 3 parts per trillion. Again, that'll be part of a treatment process, and blending of water process is how we'll make that happen. What we found when we did a lot of the testing with the mini Benny is that if we purely tried to treat PFAS out with those filters, we were getting about half life out of the filter material and significant costs in replacing that. So the ability to treat it down to something that's higher than that and then blend it into the surface water that we receive, which really has no PFAS of substance in it, allows us to be able to bring that number down to the 3 parts per trillion. Sir.
And then maybe just about some conservatism that we build in when we look at MCLs. MCLs are interesting. So they're called, it stands for maximum contaminant level. Those health-based guidance levels pretty much always come out ahead of time. And then they go through a scientific process to determine level of risk associated with things in any exposure path. So in MCL, PFAS was fascinating when they looked at, and it's not just PFAS that this has happened to, but we are exposed to PFAS all over the place. We all have about probably 14 or 15 parts per trillion of PFAS.
Actually, parts per billion.
Parts per billion.
Yes.
So even an order of magnitude more in our blood right now. So when they set an MCL, water is the easiest exposure path to control.
Oh.
So what they do is they say, we assume what you're exposed to in all the other exposure pathways, we can't change. Air, dust, dirt, carpet, clothing, cookware, all these other exposure pathways where you're already being exposed to PFAS. They assume those are going to stay relatively flat. And they say, with that assumption that you're exposed to that much PFAS already, what do we need to lower PFAS to in water? So it's a really fascinating burden that they put on water utilities. But my point is that in the MCL for exposure with 4 parts per trillion in water, there's a lot of conservatism built in there also. They also assume that that's the level that the most at-risk population can be exposed to. So not a healthy adult, more like fetus, immunocompromised people. Those are the highest at-risk populations that they set the MCLs considering. So there's a lot of interesting conservative scientific approach built into the MCL. And then we apply a 75% factor on top of that. Sorry. Yes.
No, good.
Yes.
Those other factors that contribute to PFAS and is that people, if the industry at some point reduces that, like in clothing, in detergents or whatever, and you already see it, like, right, in terms of what's out there in the marketplace. So if they start to lower it, which is the worst contributor, would we possibly have a different standard down the road and not have to meet this burden?
They sometimes will go through a reassessment and MCLs can go up because of all those other contributing factors, but it takes a long, long time. So there's no built-in review period to necessarily do that. Somebody has to initiate it. What we participate in groups.
But they're using data from way back, probably on all the other.
Well, they're using the data that's available. So it's a little bit dated. It's not going too far back. But when we go lobby, that's part of the point we try to make is, hey, the most appropriate way to control exposure is eliminate the sources. Don't just regulate water providers because that's primarily the approach. They have done some regulation on source control for PFAS. So over time, we will see it change, but just because people can't buy PFAS containing clothing That's good. But there's no regulation to make people get rid of their PFAS containing stuff. So it takes a long time to cycle out carpets, for example. A lot of the stuff in carpets were high concentrations of PFAS, but the population isn't going to go cycle through their carpet and get rid of it and get non-PFAS containing carpet. So it takes a
But
long
that is a trend, like people are getting rid of carpet.
Yeah, they are. So it will cycle out. And so we could see the MCL go up, but somebody would have to initiate, like an industry group, like maybe water providers would have to go in and say, hey, this MCL is no longer applicable because all these other exposure pathways have changed now. And try to encourage a review of the MCLs. You'll see MCLs change up sometimes, but it's more rare than it is common. And it's not going to happen in
Yeah.
our careers or maybe our life, or not going to, because there's so much of this out there that those exposure paths are going to stay.
And what's interesting is in testing the Cherry Creek wells, and as an example, depending on which well we test and how much water we're drawing down, the numbers will fluctuate some. So it's very hard to, get an exact number on these. The other thing we noticed with Quincy Reservoir, as over time the numbers have gone up, we haven't been turning over that reservoir. So we believe that some of the stormwater actually has, that's contributed to the reservoir, has actually impacted those numbers a little bit too. So it's, unfortunately, as Marshall said, it's everywhere. And I think to really fully understand the impact is something we're not even clear on right now. So again, just what we're doing is still going to be extremely protective of public health, and it's based on the best available science we have at the time. Approximately double our GAC absorber life, which another issue that everyone's having with these 3 treatment processes is, since more and more people are having to bring them online, the replacement of the filter material has gone up significantly. So we went, I think about 3 or 4 years ago, from about $300,000 to replace a filter to it's closer to $500,000 to replace a filter. So that's why it was so important in our minds to keep the O&M costs down and to really try to optimize our system. And then we're going to return back to using the Cherry Creek wells and Quincy Reservoir as part of our water portfolio. And this will allow us to do several things. It'll allow us to bring that additional water into, right now, Griswold. We also have a future project that will allow us to bring that water into Windlinger. So it does actually help us, particularly early in the season, with our treatment process because of the alkalinity in the water from the wells. It also allows us to keep moving water into Aurora Reservoir because we're not displacing that water. And it also allows us to keep more water in the Spinney Reservoir. And then for the overall water quality management of Quincy, being able to turn that reservoir over is one of the things that will really significantly help us with that, which is one of the areas where we run into the cytotoxins or the blue-green algae issues during the summertime. So turning that water over, along with phosphorus handling that we do there and aeration, will make that reservoir much more healthy, if you will. So I think that was it. So any other questions?
So the turnover of the water from Quincy is that you're putting it in Aurora Reservoir?
So we're moving water from the mountains basically into Quincy Reservoir, so Spinney.
But where does the Quincy water go?
It would go to the treatment plant.
Yes,
Oh,
directly to the treatment plant.
Okay.
So
And then into the system being blended
Yep.
with
Yes.
other
down.
water to reduce the PFAS content.
Yeah, so part of what we wanted to make sure to communicate is originally, as Earl said back in like 2022, we came and said, hey, we're going to be very conservative and we're going to just, while the EPA goes through their process of setting an MCL, we're going to take our sources offline that we don't have the ability to remove PFAS from. So, and try to ensure that we're not exposing any of our customers to any level of PFAS because we don't know where this is going to land. Now we know where it's landed, so we can bring the sources back online, which are also, we should probably point out, very low volume sources. Again, our highest volume sources are still going to be Aurora Reservoir and the South Platte River coming down to Benny. So Quincy and the Cherry Creek wells are lower volume sources. And that's why we can bring them online with a blending approach and the conservative 75% of the MCL until we get treatment built. So Earl also touched on, we're not going to bring the Cherry Creek wells up to full volume yet. In order to bring them back online at the full volume, we will have to build that ion exchange treatment. So, and we are pursuing a grant for that project.
And that's what I was gonna ask about. I know there was the grant proposal for Griswold last year when we went to DC. Did that move forward, and is that being impacted at all by any of the stuff happening at the federal level?
Yes, and yes, and yes, right? So we got a small grant for design. But the larger grant would be for construction, and we've got some uncertainty with everything going.
Yep.
So we're hoping to acquire that large grant. So this will give us also the opportunity to not feel quite as pressured to move forward with treatment on our own. We can bring, I don't know what, this is like half or 3/4 capacity of the Cherry Creek wells.
Yeah, so we can run quite comfortably 6. We can maybe get up to 7, but our objective right now is to look at somewhere between 2 and 3 in GT.
So it gives us a little bit of time to continue to pursue the grant for the treatment.
And what is the source of the grant?
Yeah,
PHE.
Okay, cool.
well, CDPHE, but it's state.
Oh,
revolving.
it's RFI, it's the revolving.
Which is
Federal
federal money.
money that gets routed from the feds to the state,
Okay.
and we go through the state process to get it, which is why it gets complicated by the federal stuff
Right.
going on.
And then also the state budget situation is probably not helping with that either.
I don't know that the state budget
I
is
don't
affecting.
know, it's not, it's at the federal level,
Yeah.
The state,
and part of the BIL, I think, so.
the
We
states,
did get notice from the CDPHE that we were moving forward with the environmental grant, which we applied for. I submitted it yesterday, actually, so.
Great. Maybe that was one of the ones that was under the lawsuit that got resolved in the state's favor. No.
Yeah.
But if they told you you're good, that's.
Yeah, I was paused for a day and then they were like, never mind. So.
Great. Cool. Any other questions from members of the committee? Thank you. All right, and I believe we're on for our last item. Sorry, it takes me a minute to go back to the agenda when I'm looking back and forth between the items in eScript. So we have the Colorado River update with Alex.
Share my screen. Okay. Colorado River, always exciting, but what's not exciting in the world of water, right? It's all good. I think So I think I have now 15 minutes for this presentation. Just trying to decide how quickly.
I think, well, yeah, because we need to also do the other conversations during miscellaneous. So yeah, I'd
Okay,
say 15.
15 minutes. Okay, so this will be quick. But of course, if you have questions, if there's anything else, we can also circle around later or we can bring it back. What we're going to talk about, we do a brief overview on the basin and the law of the river, just for some people who may not be as familiar with it as others. Colorado River Basin, one of the most important river basins in the country. 40 million people, 30 tribes, 5 million acres of irrigated land. A couple of important pieces, we have Lake Powell and Glen Canyon Dam right at the edge of the upper division. And we have Meade and Hoover Dam over here. Those are two reservoirs with over 50 million acre feet of storage, and they really control the river. Upper division states are Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico. Arizona gets 50,000 acre feet from the upper division. Lower division states, California, Arizona, and Nevada. Mexico is also part of the river because the river ends down in the Gulf of Mexico or America, whatever we're going to call it. So a super important river. Aurora is, as you know, gets 25% of its supply-ish, 25%. So the Colorado River is very important. You can see there's a whole slew of people outside the basin who receive water from the Colorado River. There's a lot of trans-basin diversions, including the Colorado Front Range. Anything else there? No. Federal government has a huge role in administering the basin, mostly the lower part. So the upper basin states, the upper division states all control their water use, their water allocation. The two main reservoirs are federal reservoirs, of course, and because they're owned by the federal government, most of the lower division water is contracted to the water users by the federal government. So the Secretary of Interior operates the river in the lower division states. So the federal government, Bureau of Reclamation, Department of Interior has an enormous role in Colorado River. Colorado River Compact, you may remember, compacts are very unique entities, right? They are a contract between states who have sovereign authorities. They are, after the state's contract to allocate water through compacts, they then become ratified by the state legislature. So they become law in each of the states. Then they are ratified by the federal government. So they become federal law. So river compacts, to which Colorado has 9, are a contract, state law, and federal law. But when people talk about changing and renegotiating the compacts, that's a uphill journey that most people don't really ever think is going to happen. Colorado River Compact divided the river on a volumetric basis. 7.5 million acre feet to the lower division states, 7.5 million acre feet to the upper division states, and terms as to how the obligation to Mexico, 1.5 million acre feet, would be met. 25 years later, the upper division states enter into their own compact. This is divided not on a volumetric amount, but on a percentage. So they recognize that the hydrology is pretty flashy in the Colorado, always has been. And so one of the problems with the Colorado River Compact is it's a volumetric amount and doesn't really account for that changing hydrology. Upper basin, it's a percentage, and it's a percentage of whatever's there. Upper Colorado River Compact also created the Upper Colorado River Commission, which is responsible for addressing a compact curtailment if it ever occurs, and is responsible for negotiating terms and conditions of agreements with other states and the feds. Law of the river, very complicated. So when people talk about the Colorado River, they always refer to the law of the river. We have 2 compacts, 1 international treaty, 3 federal statutes, as well as a US Supreme Court case, and then agreements between the 7 basin states and the federal government as to how to operate the river. So it's very complicated, and all of those have different implications and different rules of interpretation. How do you interpret a treaty? Well, that requires 2 sovereign nations, and then throw in the tribes, who I don't think are listed here. You have 30 tribes on the Colorado River. Each one of those tribes is their own sovereign nation. So very complicated river, very complicated operating rules. The story of the river is basically a story of over allocation. So we have 7.5 million to the lower half, to the lower basin, 7.5 million to the upper division, 1.5 million to Mexico. Colorado gets 52% of the upper half available, Utah 23. The other 2 states a little bit less. 16.5 million acre feet allocated. The long-term running average has been less than 15 million acre feet since 2002. Creates a bit of a math problem. Future prognostications around where the hydrology is going, you know, in sort of very severe aridification, drought, and climate change can bring that long-term running average is projected to be 12 million acre feet, 13 million acre feet. So it becomes very problematic in terms of going forward. The players on the Colorado River are really important because personalities matter in issues like this. These are the 7 basin state representatives. Our representative, Becky Mitchell, has been doing a great job for Colorado. The state of Colorado realized, what's that, about 5 years ago, they realized that the Colorado River, the next increment of negotiations, was big enough that for the first time ever, they made the commissioner, UCRC, the Upper Colorado River Commission commissioner, a full-time state position with access to a whole team of people from the Water Conservation Board and from the Attorney General's office and from the Department of Natural Resources. Becky is our commissioner. These are the lower basin commissioners. These are our other upper basin commissioners, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. And these 4 people have been working very hard to work together and to be on the same page and to really coordinate and have a very unified response to the lower basin and the federal government on what's coming next.
Well, I was just going to ask on the commissioners, you said ours is now under the state with a team that you can access. Is that the same case for the other states?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think so, but I'm not really sure. Other people involved may know.
Yeah, they're all set up a little differently.
Yeah,
So Wyoming, I think he's the state engineer.
and historically has been the state engineer. His predecessor was the state engineer.
So he's a position at the same level as Becky, but
Okay.
he's got more responsibilities than just the Colorado River.
Esteban used to be the head of their, it's called the New Mexico In-Stream Flow Commission, which was sort of like our CWCB. And then he also was the state engineer. He also was the commissioner for the Bureau of Reclamation at one point, but now I think he's just the UCRC commissioner.
And does he have access to staff, or is it like he has to do everything?
No, they all have access to staff in slightly different ways. So they all are supported by teams, and in addition to having access to staff, for example, Colorado, Becky has a team of advisors outside of state staff as well. This advisor, and
Marshall's an advisor.
the advisors then meet with the commissioner. And so all the states have set up support teams and staff. It looks a little different in each state. and I don't even know if we could fully describe it very well. For example, Utah is pretty complex, the way they've set up their support, because they created another whole position and team that also works on the Colorado River, but reports a little differently than directly to Gene. So it's kind of
So
fascinating.
does at the federal level, do they have a lot of influence? Because obviously California has 1 million state representatives compared to us or Utah or Wyoming.
That is a very good question. So it's complicated, right? And the reason for the compact to begin with was based on 100 years ago in 1922, while they were negotiating it before that, was based on that fear that lower division states were growing so much faster and would have more influence. So that is a concern generally, and take on this, generally the federal legislature has been focused on the Senate influence. So for example, right now, Senator Hickenlooper has worked very hard to create a team of all the Colorado River senators to be in communication and connect. I think we would say, I guess I would say, the Bureau of Reclamation certainly seems to work much more closely with the lower basin than they do with the upper basin. And so one of the things that the advisor group has been engaged in, Marshall's been working on, we've all in different ways, is how do we get the Bureau of Reclamation to take the upper division states as seriously as the lower division states? The numbers are so different. I think that's what has led to kind of a historical focus on the lower division. And one of the slides that I don't have in here is the lower division states, while they are allocated 7.5 million acre feet, have generally used almost 10 to 11 million acre feet a year. And they have a lot larger population. So the players, we are already out of time almost. The other players outside of the states are, of course, Bureau of Reclamation, the tribes, Mexico, and NGOs are also very involved because one of the things I forgot to mention when talking about the 40 million people, 5 million acres of land is the huge biodiversity on the river. Of course, we have numerous national and state parks. We have numerous wildlife refuges, state and national refuges. We have incredible biodiversity all the way through to the Delta, to the Colorado River Delta. Within Colorado, we've kind of talked about, so this is Front Range Water Council. Aurora is, of course, on the Front Range Water Council. These are the entities that bring water over from the Colorado River Basin to the Front Range. And so they're very engaged. Our tribes are already taken care of, which is really nice. So that makes it a little easier. Compact curtailment is a big question on people's minds. There's some talk out there. Arizona has been talking about how the upper basin states will be out of compliance with the states in 2027. Colorado River operates on a 10-year rolling average. We will not be out of compliance with that 10-year rolling average in 2027.
And the compliance is based on the volume. The way compliance is built in is we shall not deplete the river such that deliveries on that 10-year rolling average are less than 75 million acre feet, which is interesting.
Yes, and the state, we have always leaned very heavily on this idea that we have a non-depletion obligation, not a delivery obligation. And that's becoming more relevant as we go forward. And I'm sorry we can't spend more time on this because it's all super interesting. In 2007, 7 basin states got together with the federal government, also with Mexico, and to create different guidelines for operating the river. And we have been living under these guidelines since 2007. The big deal right now is that these guidelines expire at the end of 2026. And if they are not replaced by a new operating agreement, the river management, the management of Lake Mead and Lake Powell goes back to how it was managed in the past. which might not be bad for the upper division states. You're like, okay, yeah, that's great. That could work very well for us. One of the big issues between the lower basin and upper basin states is what are reservoirs for? Generally in the upper basin, we say reservoirs are for our savings account. We're to pull off of them in emergencies. Municipalities really think about reservoirs as having that emergency reserve, as being able to get us through dry times. It appears that the lower basin states see reservoirs as, oh, we have all this water, let's use it all now, and it'll fill up later, and we'll just take what we can today, and they don't see it as a long-term savings account. Those two philosophies are creating some difficulty.
Sorry, I know we're short on time. Lake Mead and Lake Powell. So as they deplete because they're using more in the lower basin, what does that do to us? It makes us not have
Yeah.
enough water, right?
Well,
I mean,
technically,
we're
our
having to give them.
obligation. So we have Lake Powell was the upper basin, was to help the upper basin states be able to meet their obligations by passing 7.5 plus the upper basin share of the Mexico obligation, so 8.23 million acre feet a year. Lake Powell is designed to enable us to do that on a regular basis and temper buffer the dry years and the wet years. Lake Powell has been pulled down quite dramatically because of the 2007 guidelines, which created a equalization process, which is a little complicated to go into, but basically when Lake Mead was below a certain level and Lake Powell was above a certain level, there would be an equalizing and more water would be brought down from Powell. There's also other factors at play. I don't know what Marshall wants to.
But you'll hear out there the discussion of the lower basin gaming the system. I don't know if you've heard that. You've probably heard some of that. Essentially what that means is if they drain Lake Mead, it sucks water out of Lake Powell and draws the whole system down. They've even admitted, various representatives from multiple states in the lower basin have said, yeah, we did that intentionally to maximize our ability to use Colorado River water. So part of the complication now in negotiations is they're saying, hey, we're dependent on all this water we've been using, and so we can't trim back. We need to, if we're going to trim back, you have to trim back. And Alex mentioned they've been using 11.5 million acre feet a
And why
year.
aren't they penalized?
We're using about 4.5 cumulatively among the upper basin states. So we're saying, wait a second. The intent of the compact was this volumetric half for you, half for us. That's a problem. So again, Becky's doing a great job. She's taken the approach of, hey, you guys need to get yourself within your 7.5 million of use that you submitted to. And when you do that, we can talk about how we might be able to partner for future hydrologies that look very bleak. So, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's set up this slide. So I just skipped way ahead to the elusive consensus, because as Marshall just said so well, the lower basin has been overusing for a long time. And we get it. It's difficult, right? Who are you going to tell you can't use this water anymore? But they need to do it. And in fact, just a little piece of history. In the late 90s, up until the late 90s, California, which gets 4.4 million acre feet, was using 5.5 million acre feet. They were well above their allocation. And the Department of Interior Secretary at the time, Gail Norton, who was from Colorado, said to California, because remember the Department of Interior is the water master for the lower basin. She said, if you don't reduce your use to 4.4, I'll do it for you. And they did it. They did it. California got within 4.4. They reduced it. So it's possible. But now, of course, they're using way above.
I just have a question. So there's this whole, oh, you're going to be out of compliance,
Right.
whatever happening. But my understanding is never have we actually been out of compliance from the upper basin to the lower basin. Like it's never been the case that we have not been putting our share back into the river.
Absolutely true.
Yes.
We have we have always maintained that 10-year rolling average of over 75 million acre feet. So that is absolutely true. What they're saying is, but you're going to be. And by 2027 is what they're saying right now. Partially because the hydrology of the river is shrinking and there's less water in the system. So if we maintain our uses at the 3.5 to 4.5 million acre feet, and there's not enough, there's less water in the system, there would be less water going into Lake Powell. And then they're arguing that they could claim we are out of compliance, and that is one of them.
And just in that context of compact compliance issues. So as you know, in Colorado, rivers are all administered according to the priority system. And when there's not enough water to go around, the water commissioner is called by the senior right, and they say, I'm going to put on a call, and I'm going to call for my right. And then the water commissioner with the other commissioners goes up and down the stream, and they shut down all the junior rights. There is no such mechanism in place on the Colorado River. So if the lower basin, if Arizona were to say Colorado or the upper division states are out of compliance, there's no person that they call to say, administer the river. So it would probably be a lawsuit. It would, the federal government does not have the same control in the upper division states that they have in the lower division states. There's no mechanism right now for our state engineer to administer water rights vis-a-vis the compact, the Colorado River Compact, as there are for other compacts in other parts of the state. So it would be a very messy, long, complicated process as to, even if everyone agreed we're out of compliance, how that translates to actual actions on the ground will take years to sort out. So one of the problems is, as Marshall mentioned, that we're getting warmer, right? This is 1900, 2020. This is temperature data. So we're not getting into anything other than hard data. And I think everyone also can say anecdotally, every summer is a little hotter. I think every summer our water supply report says, hey, guess what? This was the hottest month on record. 2024 was the hottest year on record. 2023 was the hottest year before that. So we're getting hotter. What does that do to water supply? Well, it increases evaporation. It increases percolation. So as our forests dry, as our riverbanks dry, as everything's hotter, it requires more water. So it will decrease water supply in the streams. It will, and we're already seeing that in numerous places throughout the West.
And it increases water use.
It increases water use, absolutely. So it decreases supply, it increases use. So it creates a double problem. Colorado is warmed. It's predicted to get warmer. This is what water supply issues are facing unequivocally. Precipitation is a little different. So precipitation, while what we're there, particularly in Colorado, which is kind of a very different state, in part because of our elevation, it's not so much that there's going to be less precipitation in some areas of the United States. The USGS and NOAA have been saying you're going to see less precipitation. In other areas, you're going to see more precipitation. Colorado, it's not so much that we're going to see less precipitation, but it's going to come differently. So instead of those monsoonal rains wash in every, afternoon throughout June and July that at least I grew up with in Colorado, we're not going to see those. We're going to see bigger storms dumping more water all at once. We're going to see less snowpack. We're going to see snowpack coming off faster, melting faster. So it's changing how the water is coming, which changes how we as water supply managers have to think about our infrastructure and how we're going to capture the water that we are entitled to. This is just another slide.
Sorry, I know we're running out of time, but so in that note, we're out of time. Well, since I'm prepared, we can just go over a little bit.
Redo this next month.
Well, we have a whole part 2.
So maybe we can move some of this into part 2.
Part 2's bigger and more complicated and controversial already. We're almost done with part one.
Yeah.
I just quickly, so and maybe this is coming in part two, in terms of storage, looking at the water supply update, we're often up in the 90-something percent of capacity for our system in terms of storage. So is that one of the ways that like we, as Aurora at least, would have to
Yeah,
adjust?
that's one of the big-
Because snow is kind of its own natural reservoir for that whole portion of the year. If
one
it's
of the
falling less
things
and melting faster, we have a problem.
we need wild horse is because we need to respond to the variabilities Alex was talking about. We also have some other water supplies that we can maximize. So yes, we need more storage. That is one of our solutions.
We don't lose the water that's
Yep.
coming in.
Yep, we need to maximize every drop we can, and so we do need more storage. We are hitting the 90% range. No, we don't stay there very long, right? Would love to stay there longer, but probably what you're saying is when our storage condition will get up into the 90s. It rarely gets to 100. So, but there are opportunities.
So in terms of thinking about what's coming next month, just what's happening in Colorado is also happening in the Arkansas and the South Platte, right? Warming is not limited to one area of the world. So the similar pressures, different politics, different laws at play, but similar pressures are coming in the South Platte and the Arkansas. This slide we will go over in more detail next time. It's just an introductory to the conversation that we've just started, which is that where are our supplies coming from? How are we going to meet the future? What that looks like, given some of these factors. Aurora has taken a lot of actions. Aurora Water has taken a lot of actions to really grow intentionally. And that's the conversation that's so important, given these stressors that are increasing in impact on water supply and our ability to build the infrastructure that we need, which is becoming more and more expensive and complicated. How do we make sure that our future is very intentional? What are we doing in terms of our growth and what we're looking at to be as intentional as possible so we can be as smart as possible? And you all will have a big role in that. We can talk more in detail about those next time as well.
Yeah, I think that one of the takeaways from this is we're going to need to do more than what we've already done.
But what about everybody else?
Well,
Because we keep doing it and it's like, what about Colorado Springs? What about, I don't know, what other areas in Colorado, let alone other states in our upper basin? Are they all doing what we're doing?
that's a really
Castle
good
Rock
question.
just did,
Well,
similar.
so you
to
look
our-
at a lot of what's up there, and we are seeing that others are following positive examples
They're copying us.
in a lot of things. So there is good movement, and we're not by ourselves in trying to lead positively in this space. But not everybody's on board yet. So yeah, what can we do? We're limited in what we can do, obviously, with others. We try to work in partnerships. We try to do a lot of positive things. We try to lead by example. There are, interestingly, pieces of state legislation. So you remember last year, we typically come and say, hey, local control, we need to maintain local control. Don't let the state
Yes. override
local control. Last year, you remember the water conservation bill that went to the state? We came to you and we said, hey, this is kind of a local control issue, but we would recommend we support this bill, even though it gets into local control because it was in this space. So there are things like that that are going on and will continue to go on where we may come and say, yeah, this is good state legislation. We didn't agree 100% with everything that was in that, but we agreed probably 95% with what was in there. So we came and recommended a support position. So we are trying to do things, but it is a problem. There is not consistency. There are different approaches, there are different mentalities. and we can't control them.
I think, every jurisdiction is unique. You know, with their water system and just, the growth and so forth. The problem I have with the state doing mandates is it's not the same for every jurisdiction. So I don't understand why they don't just do more incentives to encourage the right approach, because the blanket approach may not be good for everybody.
They did an incentive also, so they did create, I think it was 2 million though. Does that sound right?
Yeah, for the turf.
Okay, yeah, 2
Yeah.
million. But they put in an incentive program, but just Aurora by ourselves, our water conservation incentives are about that same size, just for ourselves. So 2 million for the state
Oh.
did not go very far. So there's always the competition for funding. There's challenges. So we will get into some more of those. Again, in part 2 on what we think might make sense for Aurora in the future. What else we may be able to do, and definitely interested in thoughts, feedback, ideas.
The turf incentives that we did, we did on our own. We didn't get money from the state. Can we get some money back now?
Well, we've got some money. I would also suggest, since we don't have a lot of time, that you always need the carrot and the stick. Right? We have sticks that we use when we need people to change their water use. We have sticks. And those are really important tools. So mandates can be very important tools, particularly when you're dealing with something as critical as water. I don't think we take any tool off the tool. Incentives are great. Of course, everyone wants incentives first, but sometimes you just have to tell people you can't do that. And that's what we need, right?
Which we learned with our own developers, right? We
Oh,
tried only incentives first and we got like no response.
Yeah.
So we had to come along later with the
I
mandates.
think that's a better, I guess, when you tried that first, and then at least you're like, you didn't even.
But I think the state did before last year have incentives that they were offering. But
And they may
I
have
think-
done I think you're right. They probably did, was the 2 million 1 year ahead of?
The first year was 2024.
Okay, so it was approved in 2023, affected in 2024. So I think they did do some incentive a year ahead of when they did the mandates.
yes, so it sounds like we're going to talk about that component more next time. I want to respect the time of folks that do need to get moving. I wonder if we can take a moment in case anybody needs to get to another meeting or something, and just you and anybody else that needs to be here for the Niagara conversation can stay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, if anybody else needs to take off since we are over time, we just have under miscellaneous matters, conversation about Niagara that probably not everyone needs that.
So anybody- No, let's keep that connected to somebody.
Yeah, well, because we might need attorneys. Anybody else probably can go if they need to. All right, so now miscellaneous matters, conversation about Niagara that we had last time.
So we have drafted a letter. I wanted to walk you all through the letter, some of the numbers in the letter, so you can see what we are probably going to send to them this week. We have had a conversation with them. Vern actually had the conversation about, hey, you're looking at tens of millions of dollars if you're wanting to do this. They didn't seem to react real strongly to that.
No, I think Eric, for the most part, he's just thrown it out there, right? We have this need, scenario 1, scenario 2. We want to expand our usage at the facility. And of course, at the time, it was, well, do you have the capacity in your infrastructure to support that? And so, of course, when I approached Marshall about it, he's like, well, to expand their capacity, we really need to address their connection fees and their usage and their burden to the utility.
Mhm.
So what the letter does is outline, and we didn't even, I think last time we talked to you, I wasn't aware that they had kind of a scenario 1 additional 150,000 gallons per day. And then they came in later with a scenario 2 that is even bigger, which is 250,000 gallons a day of use. So what we did in the letter was kind of, we wanted to document, here's what we understand your request is. Here are the existing conditions. They're using, on average, 500,000, over 500,000 gallons per day for the last 5 years. And so we do have a little bit of context we want to paint on that. But for now, the next section of the letter then goes down to the history of fees paid. So they paid about $2 million for the water fee portion of their connection fees previously, but the value of the 500,000+ gallons, the cost to the utility for that supply was about $29.5 million. So they took advantage of again, they didn't do anything unethical. They didn't anything.
Right, they were just offered a deal that
They
we wouldn't offer them
took
today.
advantage of a broken fee structure and came in and received a 27.5 million kind of inadvertent subsidy. That we then have to recover those costs from somewhere. It's going to take us a long time to do that. So what we're saying in this letter is, okay, if you want us to consider an expansion, we now have a large water user guide that establishes uses. Under that guide, you would not even be allowed to come. But the large water user guide allows for an exception. To consider your exception, you would have to pay that delta up above, the $27.5 million for the value of what we provided originally. Then you would have to pay on top of that the cost of the connection fee to connect to our system today. So they're and by the way, the $27.5 million, we're not suggesting they pay today's value. It would be the 20 whatever when they connected values. So we're giving them a little bit of a break there. They're still not going to be happy with it, but we're saying they would have to pay $27.5 million plus either 18 or 29 on top of that in order to look at their expansion.
Yeah, just to give it some context there. December 1 is when in 2013, we established the volumetric use charge of $57.45 per gallon per day. When they paid the $1.9 million, that was in November, just prior to us changing the fee structure. And so they came in under the wire, if you will, 30 days prior to establishing the volumetric use charge.
So if they'd have come in a month later, they'd have had to have paid the 29.
And then we could be having a different conversation with them
Well,
today.
yeah, it would be a different.
I don't want them here, but my issue is legally, they did not do anything wrong. We screwed up,
Which is why we're presenting it.
so
Well,
why,
I don't
I know, but how are you gonna say you have to pay the delta of 27.5 million, which was something from the past that they were not obligated to pay legally?
Because it's for a new thing that they want to do now.
Yeah, so we
Okay,
don't
so-
have.
So they don't
legal
have to pay
mechanism.
that unless they want to expand.
Right, we would love it if they would, but
But they
we don't
won't.
have
Yeah,
any
okay.
legal, you're right,
Right.
we don't have any legal mechanism to say,
Yeah,
give
you
it.
owe us.
What we have is, just as Alison mentioned, or Chairman Coombs, sorry.
You're good. We're good.
What we have is their request to expand today, and
Okay.
we have a large water user guide that says, you're not eligible, no,
No, right.
but it allows us to make an exception. So what we're saying is, if you want us to make an exception, you have to make
Okay.
us whole If you'll make us whole, we'll grant you an exception and allow you to purchase additional capacity.
Okay, so if they say we're not gonna expand at all, then they stay with their current, but
And
aren't
this
we
gets,
changing some rates for them too?
we are.
Oh.
But all the same as we're changing for anybody, but the difference with Niagara is there's a couple of things that are a little different. I mentioned earlier, we're not giving them a break on their sewer fee. Most of that water, that 515,000 gallons a day that they're using goes in bottles.
87% of it is not returned to the senators.
So one of the ways we're trying to, over time, offset that 29, there's nothing legally that requires us to give them that sewer exception
Right.
either. So we're making them pay full freight on the sewer, but we looked at that, it's gonna take 100 and some years, to make up that. It may have been more like 500 years. I mean, it was crazy. So we're making a dent in the $27.5 million accidental subsidy. So no, you're absolutely right. We don't have a legal mechanism to go back to them and say,
Yeah.
you have to pay us that. All we can do is say, if you want to expand, you have to make us whole, then we would approve an expansion.
Okay,
So that is the nuance here. The other thing that I mentioned earlier, if they did make us whole there, we would consider an exception on their sewer.
okay.
We would only make them pay for the 13% that's returning to the sewer. That would be a concession we would be looking.
But we would apply the consumptive rate to the expansion
Yes.
because they're, again, of the 150,000 gallons, for instance, in scenario one, only 20,000 gallons of it is returned to the sewer. So we apply the higher rate for the 130,000 gallons minus the 20, which comes in at the lower rate. So that's why it equates to the $17.9 million.
The other thing we're building into the letter so that you all are aware. I guess we may or may not have to build this into the letter, but it has been suggested because Niagara has reached out now to the mayor. They've reached out to Councilman Sundberg or Mayor Pro Tem Sundberg. The approach they're taking right now is come on these tours, be a partner with us.
I got requests.
Look at all the stuff we're donating.
All this great stuff we're doing.
Yeah.
And so
I did their survey and said you've done nothing.
Same.
Although I never heard of
They
your
sent the-
community engagement ever.
they sent the survey out.
Yes, I took the survey and was like, what community engagement? Glad we're on the.
So they're ramping up their public campaign right now. So talking to a couple of of the council members, they're like, yeah, you probably ought to get this to all of council. So right now we're talking about bringing it either to exec under negotiations or the winter workshop as an agenda item. This is none of this is secret. This is pretty,
Right, this is a public meeting right now.
this is a public
Right.
meeting. So this is public information. All of this is available publicly. So we're trying to decide which setting is most appropriate. And one of the comparisons we'll bring to you is an illustration of what that volume of water does. We're
Right.
trying to find a development. And so we're not talking about just, here's a few homes or businesses. What we're trying to do is align that with this volume of water is what's required to serve a Windler or what's Oakwood's.
So I did do the calculation real quickly. And at current usage, their current usage of 200 million gallons a year would be all of Oakwood's Prairie Point site,
Oh, wow.
Oakwood's
the entire site.
Wow.
So that's the other thing we'll bring
At
to
current
the
usage.
illustration is this. So this, this is literally
Expansion.
a
Gosh.
one business footprint
Mhm.
up north with basically this water use going through 1 meter.
I think you do it at the winter workshop. It's public.
So
And then what?
and we may have heard back from them at that point, but we're trying to get to council sooner than later. Because once this letter goes out, which again will probably be within the next week or so, it'll take them a while to work through who's gonna call whom, but they'll start.
I mean,
I mean, could we also just do like a special study session on like water issues? Like we can talk about this, we can talk about whatever's coming to us next month on Colorado Part 2.
We talked about special study and the thought was, because study sessions are so short now, that we didn't think we'd have enough time
Yeah.
to do it in the study. Which is why we looked at potentially exec. And winter
But
workshops.
exactly was shorter. So yeah, maybe winter workshop is good. We're close enough, but if not, if it was like, no, we really need to talk about this, maybe we have a special study session on a week that we wouldn't normally have a council meeting and just dig into some water issues.
And so part of the
Okay, so that's
thinking,
less than a month.
Yeah.
it is, and part of the thinking is the letter will go out in a week or so. Even if calls start coming in, we could communicate to council, this is agendized to talk about that. The risk with that going to a winter workshop
Which
is.
is a spring budget. It's not winter.
Spring,
Oh, yeah, okay, spring workshop, even though it's kind
we
of.
did just do the winter.
Yeah, winter workshop.
One of the challenges there is, do we have Niagara show up at the workshop and start?
Well, they
Well, they
can't talk.
don't, yeah, they don't have the right to
They don't
comment.
get to comment.
Okay. So you're.
We don't have public comment during workshops.
So just clear it.
Right, and then maybe try to pull council members aside during lunch or whatever, fine, they can do that.
But this is a conversation we have with a lot of users that come in. And they're large water users like Philip Morris at the Project Waterfall site, where they change their process in order to really comply with our large water user guide. So these are things that we bring out early on in the conversation, recognizing all the things we talked about just previously.
Yeah, so with everybody else, we're saying you have to comply with our large water users. So Philip Morris made a lot of adjustments. Car washes are having to make adjustments. So data centers are having to make adjustments. So the thing that's unique, and Gaylord, we're telling them, you're gonna have to comply also. You're gonna have to pay appropriate fees, et cetera. Now, this one's a little different because we're saying, yeah, we wouldn't mind getting the $27 million. We were kind of out last time, so we would be willing to give you an exception if we do think they're gonna say not just no, but no way. So.
Right, and then start calling everyone and saying, hey,
And saying how unfair it is. And to your point, part of why we need to talk to all of council is to explain, this is not we're not trying to exercise a legal right. We're just saying, if you want to expand, here's how we would consider.
And let's bring up the fact that they did get an incentive way back then as well.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't remember what.
I don't know what.
I don't
know what it-
recall. It wasn't an incentive for bonds.
No, but it was like sales tax or
Oh, was it?
something.
Okay, I don't recall that.
I think.
So
Yeah.
let's see if we can get that.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you're right, they did get a.
I mean, it's just not fair. Like if to have a user like this, and we did it, I don't know, how many years ago? 20, 30?
2013.
12 years ago.
Times have changed, as we just talked about, and just conditions and so forth, and it's not fair to constituents, and it's not fair to developers even that are,
And we literally.
impacting our economy in a different way. Like, they don't even have hardly any jobs.
Don't. I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, so yes, let's plan to have that at the winter workshop. I think that's probably the best approach. Maybe let council know, this is the letter we sent. We may be getting calls, just so that folks are aware.
Yeah.
How about we may be getting calls and we are talking to the person first.
Perfect.
Yeah, but please reach out to us to talk about these issues, should you have any questions. All right, so our next meeting is scheduled for my side, but I believe it's the 16th at 10:30, 16th of April, 10:30. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay, then we will See y'all then. The meeting is adjourned. We'll also see you before that at the workshops.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Okay, I just have to